Hey everyone, Rua here with the first installment in a completely new set of videos on the lore of Final Fantasy XI. 11 actually has some of the best lore in the entire series, but it's something more than a few players will miss out on, amidst the bustle of all that entails in an MMORPG. Just a quick thing before we get started, these lore videos will contain spoilers, and in the case of Blue Mage, some of them are pretty major, so I ought to give you all a heads up in case you don't know what's ahead. If you're still here, then I can only assume this doesn't bother you, in which case, let's proceed. The Empire of Urghan is an empire situated on the western coast of the Aragia continent, due east of the Mindatia and Elshamo continents, homes of the Federation of Windest and the Mithran tribes of Kazam. Being so far removed from the Middlelands, a term used by the Empire's denizens to categorize the western nations, the Empire has been detached from the historic conflicts such as the Crystal War. It has, however, not been spared from the scourge of warfare, far from it. The Empire has been embroiled in a seemingly never-ending stream of conflicts, either with the Beastmen hordes in its capital's immediate vicinity, or with the Yugudo Mikado to the east. Although the severity of conflict ebbs and flows as new figures rise and fall in the nations, so much warfare inevitably led to the Empire running short of able-bodied troops to fill the ranks. Such was the extent of the manpower shortage that even with its overseas imperial holdings, the Empire was still facing a sharp deficit. Even the efforts of the first generations of the Empire's elite serpent generals were unable to stem the wanton loss of life. Although they were strong in their own rights, the serpent generals still only numbered 5 and could not alleviate the issue by themselves. As need exceeded possibility, the Empire's alchemists were set a task on producing a solution to the problem. Such a daunting task called for drastic measures in the minds of the Imperial alchemists, and for better or worse, desperation tends to produce remarkable innovation. Initially, the alchemists set about combining various monsters to create creatures of such savagery and dread that they would act as a deterrent against future aggression, but the fruits of their efforts were disastrous. Far away from the prying eyes of the general public, the alchemists performed all manner of experiments in the Hazholm testing grounds, a place which still bears the scars of what transpired there. The chimeras, so they were named by their creators, could predictably enough not be controlled, and almost destroyed the imperial capital of Alzabi. Now facing a third front of conflict, desperation gave way to even greater desperation. The alchemists who had brought the monstrous chimeras into the world were tasked with taking them out of it. To do this, they devised a new method of directly infusing the essence of monsters into the souls of mortals, and thus the art of blue magic was born. Although undeniably a sin against creation the religious orders of the Middlelands would certainly not abide by, the impact the fledgling order of blue mages had on the war was incredible. By taking on the attributes and powers of monsters, blue mages proved to be fearsome opponents to face, capable of feats which far outclassed those of men and beastmen alike, capable of felling entire divisions of the Empire's enemies single-handedly. Such was their rise to fame, the Empire's subjects bestowed on them the honorary moniker of the Immortals, a title which stuck and became the name of their new elite order. Blue magic is markedly different from the core schools of white and black magic in that it cannot be taught from an academy or through a simple magic scroll. In order to acquire blue magic, one must wrest it from the very soul of a fallen opponent. Blue magic is also distinct in that it enables the practitioner to use the techniques of monsters while in the form of a person, which explains how blue mages are capable of feats of superhuman power. However, this is also noted to cause major strain on the body of the blue mage, which is likely why the Empire is very meticulous in their selection process when recruiting new blue mages. Only the physically strongest, and mentally sound with a malleable soul, can hope to wield the power of blue magic, and stand a chance of not losing themselves in the process. Following the quelling of the Chimera Rebellion, the Immortals fell under the command of the incumbent ruler of the Empire, and of their Grand Vizier. The Immortals were charged with the protection of the incumbent ruler, the security of imperial cities, and were called in to handle situations befitting their powers. Situations the regulars of the Imperial Army could not handle by themselves. Their role has not changed much since their inception, but the once revered image of the Immortals has definitely soured as the years have come and gone. Whether this has been the result of the Immortals overstepping their boundaries at the behest of their commanders, or otherwise down to the rank and file simply not trusting those with more power than themselves, but with nowhere near as much accountability, the fact remains that the working relationship between the Imperial Army and the Immortals is tenuous at best. Rumours abound about the Immortals has led to several tales being circulated by the Empire's citizens, tales meant to dissuade impressionable youth from joining their ranks. This is the frame the adventurer finds themselves wandering into on one fateful day in Urghan Whitegate. The adventurer comes to Al-Zabi as part of a recruitment drive meant to bolster the Empire's still diminished ranks, facilitated in part by the Ten Shodo. After getting their bearings and finding their feet, they come across a mysterious seer called Wayud. Wayud takes a certain interest in the adventurer, quickly and correctly discerning that they hail from the Middlelands. Wayud also discerns that the adventurer must also therefore be a mercenary, indicating that they must have come to him for a divination of their future, as they currently lack some higher purpose. Upon agreeing to the fortune teller's offer, Wayud proceeds to ask the adventurer some odd questions. Some are generic questions about destiny, while others venture into some rather serious subject matter, like how would the adventurer react to a comrade suddenly turning on them in the midst of a battle. The adventurer answers honestly as they can, despite becoming visibly unsettled by what Wayud is asking. At the end of his divination, Wayud suddenly becomes very stern, seemingly coming to a conclusion that the adventurer themselves cannot reach based on the answers they gave. Wayud then asks for an odd item as payment for his services, a Dangroth stone from the Dangroth Wadi near the Republic of Bastok, all the way back in the Middlelands. The adventurer obliges and embarks to find the stone. Upon returning to Al-Zabi with the stone, the adventurer finds that Wayud's payment was actually meant for another person, currently excavating in the Adiwa subterrane. Upon arriving at the designated meeting point, the adventurer is instead approached by a man unmistakably a member of the Immortals. The Blue Mage introduces himself as Yasfel. As it transpires, and as Yasfel tells the adventurer, Wayud's divination was actually a means of gauging their suitability to become a Blue Mage, and that Wayud himself is a member of the Immortals as well. If the adventurer thought that Wayud's questions were very unusual, not to mention rather morbid for a simple fortune-telling, it was not without reason. Wayud's questions were meant to see if the adventurer met the required temperament to become a member of the Immortals, which they do. Yasfel makes an offer to the adventurer that he will give them the power to become a Blue Mage, but vaguely warns that the power will come at a price, but they may not even notice that something is missing. Yasfel offers his hand to the adventurer, which the latter takes, despite an ominous sense of trepidation. Upon taking his hand, Yasfel incapacitates the adventurer and returns them to Al-Zabi, to the Imperial Palace, for the procedure to give the adventurer the ability to use blue magic. Although unconscious, the process nearly kills the adventurer, with the alchemists expressing their surprise that their subject was somehow able to drag themselves back from the very point of death. Also present is Wayud, now revealed to in fact be the captain of the Immortals, Ralban. Ralban seems genuinely angry that the alchemists nearly killed the unwitting person he sent to them. This heavily implies that the process developed by the alchemists for unlocking blue magic is extremely dangerous, and has, by their own admittance, resulted in more than one death already. As the adventurer wakes up, they definitely feel different, but not less, as Yasfel said they would, if they accepted his offer. The alchemists brand the new blue mage with the mark of Zahak, the mark which signifies the awakening of a blue mage's powers. Ralban congratulates the newcomer to the ranks of the Blue Mages, and tells them that in their current form they are actually weaker than most living beings, but by consuming the souls of fallen monsters, they can add their powers to their own. Ralban leaves the new recruit to their own devices, telling them to gather their new strength before returning to him. After spending an extended spell back in the Middlelands, the fledgling Blue Mage returns to Ralban for an evaluation of their progress thus far. Ralban expresses his surprise that his new recruit is showing very few signs of strain, and he takes this as a promising sign. He is not content with his own evaluation, however, and orders his protege to visit the Immortals posted at the 5 staging points around the region, receiving their marks as a sign of acknowledgement. Ralban suggests the adventurer pay close attention to the mannerisms of the Immortals they visit, and see what they can glean from them. The first Immortal the adventurer visits is Daswil. Daswil gives the impression of being an outgoing fellow, a bit too eccentric perhaps, especially considering the importance of his position, but he's still quite likeable. It's Daswil's comment about a certain mercenary company that catches the adventurer's attention though. Was Daswil once a mercenary himself? And if he was, does he consider him and the adventurer to be kindred spirits? The adventurer can only guess. Daswil gives his best wishes and then spirits them onwards. The second Immortal met is Waldine. A much older person than Daswil, Waldine fits the archetype of a wise old mentor to a T. Waldine appears to have a genuine concern about the decision the adventurers made in becoming a Blue Mage, but he nevertheless respects it, admires it even. After testing their resilience, Waldine even helps tend to the injury he inflicts, all the while giving the adventurer a warning about not losing sight of themselves. It's apparent to the adventurer that Waldine is among the most experienced of the Immortals, and they make a mental note to return for him for counsel if the need arises. The third Immortal met is Mayida. Mayida is a woman of very few words. The polar opposite of Daswil, Mayida is stern and blunt to the extent that the adventurer gets very little out of her. Perhaps this, that is to say her demeanour, is why she earned her post at the furthest reaches of the Arapago Reef. She tests the adventurer's durability before sending them on their way. The fourth Immortal encountered is Nashib. Nashib strikes to the adventurer as a very cold and calculating person. He is certainly accomplished with blue magic, but perhaps that came at the cost of his sense of empathy, as he offers very little in the way of constructive encouragement. Nashib does have some similarities with Waldine, but unlike Waldine, he comes across as being very jaded by his duties. What he does offer though is another word of warning, reiterating the same message of Waldine, but much more to the point. Nashib bestows his mark and sends the adventurer along their way. The last Immortal visited is Narima. The adventurer's encounter with Narima leaves them feeling very uneasy. Something is clearly not right with her. Her speech is broken and her body language extremely jilted, almost as though she is not in full control of her actions or her thoughts. Ralban did mention that blue magic could have adverse effects on its user. Was this what he meant? After much difficulty, Narima gives her evaluation, her mark, and bids the adventurer farewell, and they are all too keen to leave her be. With their task complete, the adventurer returns to Ralban. Having consulted with the reports of the 5 Immortals, Ralban concedes that his protege is not ready to join them, but he does acknowledge their ambition, which he says is the key trait for a blue mage, and he urges them onwards still. This prompts the adventurer to return to the Middlelands and continue with their training. Upon returning to Ralban for another evaluation, the adventurer collapses in a heap, unable to move or even cry out for help. Ralban approaches and explains that the ailment afflicting them is a common occurrence, a result of their collected blue magic invading every cell of their body. He finally reveals where the meetings between himself and the adventurer have been taking place, in a dimension of his own making, generated from the blue magic he has harnessed. Their meetings have essentially been in Ralban's own soul, an impressive feat, but one only likely possible between 2 blue mages, those both with malleable souls. Ralban decides it's time to test the adventurer's resolve and ambition for entry into the Immortals, so that they can better manage their expanding powers. He dispatches them to Mount Zahom to defeat several Flan which are resisting the Imperial army. After all, the Immortals handle that which the army cannot. The adventurer is successful and promptly returns to Urghan, who in turn praises their efforts and finally admits them into the Immortals. He grants the new Immortal leave to obtain the signature Magus armor representative of their new position. The adventurer is thrilled to have finally achieved this milestone, but as events soon to come would reveal, their jubilation was premature. Only a few days later, the new Immortal is summoned to the Imperial Palace to find it in a state of considerable panic and uproar. The Imperial Alchemists have been summoned before Urghan to offer their thoughts on how a project of theirs has seemingly gotten loose in the Azadal undersea ruins. The ruins are important to the Empire's Archaeological Institute, so the Imperial Army makes a routine of clearing it out of monsters which could threaten the lives of its workers. This creature, however, likely a creation of the alchemists given their concern, is far too powerful for ordinary soldiers to fight by themselves. During the tense exchange, one of the senior alchemists expresses concerns that if their subject is discovered, it could strain relations between themselves, the Immortals, and the Imperial Army. To which Urghan says the Immortals will resolve the crisis, as that is their purpose, to deal with threats others cannot. Deciding that this exercise would be a fitting induction for his latest recruit, and that discretion is paramount, Urghan orders the fledgling Immortal to the ruins to dispose of the threat. The creature is revealed to be called a Soulflayer, and that one should not underestimate it, even in its early stages of development. Midway through their sweep of the ruins, the Immortal encounters a colleague and cautiously approaches them. Urghan did not order any other Immortals on this mission. Suddenly, the man doubles over and falls to his knees, covering his face. Then, an horrific sight. Monstrous feelers erupt from the man's face. He convulses on the floor as dark energies pour out of him, the souls of the monsters he has absorbed. Then, just as the torrent of energy subsides, he lets out a low, guttural growl and leaps away like a beast. Shocked and struggling to comprehend what they have just seen, the Immortal gives chase. Then, they see it again, this time hanging from a tall pillar as more souls escape its body. The man stares down with a vacant, dead expression in their eyes. It flees again, and when preparing to give chase, the Immortal is stopped by a familiar voice. It is too late for him, Yasfel says with a forlorn voice. With no way possible of avoiding the truth any longer, Yasfel reveals the true nature of blue magic. Mortals were never meant to wield the immense power blue magic bestows, so to make it work, certain accommodations had to be made. The process the Imperial Alchemist devised to create a blue mage destabilizes the person's soul, so that it can take on the form of a monster on command. This is exactly what makes blue magic possible. As more monster souls are incorporated into the blue mage's own mortal soul, they run the serious risk of losing themselves, of having the monster's souls take over if they fail to control their powers. The body changes to suit the needs of the dominant soul. Subsequently, the mortal body is destroyed if the mortal soul is overpowered. This is Magus Armor's true purpose, Yasfel explains. To strengthen the blue mage by bringing the mortal and monster souls closer together, while also suppressing the physical transformation of the mortal body. Despite these horrifying revelations, Yasfel urges the Immortal forward and tells him to finish the mission by hunting the monster down and to take their power for their own. After a long search ridden with trepidation as to what they'll find at the end, the Immortal finds what was once their colleague, now a Soulflayer, the form of a fallen Immortal. This is among the Empire's greatest and darkest secrets, one it understandably goes to great lengths to conceal from its subjects. This is why the relationship between the Immortals and the Imperial Army is so strained. The commanders know about the true nature of the Immortals. How could they not? How many unwitting soldiers have fallen victim to an immortal who without any warning lost control of themselves and slaughtered their kin? How many deaths have been covered up for the sake of maintaining this awful truth? Soulflayers come in two forms. The first is far more common, a novice blue mage who simply loses their blue magic in the process of the transformation, as the monster's souls are converted into devastating elemental magic power. The other variant is what happens when a powerful, seasoned, veteran blue mage finally succumbs to the beast within. Their blue magic power is drastically increased, and they retain some semblance of sanity, but more often than not, all trace of humanity is completely destroyed. In either eventuality, Soulflayers are extremely dangerous, and it falls to the Immortals to deal with their own. This is exactly what befalls the newly formed Soulflayer. It's defeated after an intense battle. Upon their victory, Yasfel again approaches the Immortal, emphasizing the core principle of the Blue Mage, that the vessel changes shape to meet its needs. Evolution is a necessity, but ambition is ultimately what drives evolution. Ralban knew this, and this is what his questions in the guise of Wayut were meant to ascertain. Over the course of the next few months, the Immortal is in service to the Empire, working with their fellow Blue Mages to quell threats across the region. After their efforts in resolving a major crisis, they are summoned again by Ralban, this time standing tall rather than cowed in his domain, an indicator of just how far they have progressed. Ralban informs them that they have both been selected for a secret mission into Mamuk for an incursion against the Mamurja. Upon arriving at Mamuk, Ralban goes in first, ordering the Immortal to follow him in when they are prepared. And they cannot help but feel that something is amiss here, surely not another transformation. Following Ralban into the core of Mamuk, the Immortal finds him with several slain Mamurja at his feet. Turning to face his colleague, Ralban says that he is impressed that they have come this far without showing any signs of degeneration. Ralban admits that even he shows signs of the same. This much was evident from the time spent in his private domain, where the deterioration of his soul was plain to see. As he speaks, the Immortal is gripped with an ominous sense of foreboding. Where is Ralban going with this? Then, their fears are confirmed. Ralban tells the Immortal that they have grown far too powerful, too soon, and they pose a major threat to the Empire. The entire mission was a ruse to bring them both away from prying eyes to do battle. Ralban unleashes the full extent of his blue magic and draws his sword on his former student. After an intense battle, the master is bested by the student, but the Immortals stop short of killing Ralban, instead sheathing their sword and looking down on him. Complimenting them on the strength of their powers, which have now surpassed his own, Ralban questions where their path will take them now. He then suddenly laughs, having come to an epiphany. Ralban realizes that the reason his former pupil has not fallen like so many before them is because they are still, at the core of their being, an adventurer, free to go wherever they please and fueled by a deep well of ambition. This sense of freedom and the potential such ambition promises is ultimately what placated the monster's souls the adventurer took into their own. The souls ceased to be tools, and instead became a genuine part of their own. Ralban honorably discharges the adventurer from the Immortals, and as a final parting token of wisdom, expresses his wish that although they may never truly be mortal again, they would do well not to lose their true form along the way. Free from their service to the Empire, and with the potential of blue magic at their command, the adventurer departs Urghan, knowing that they cannot go back to life as an immortal or as a mercenary. The adventurer deems the mercenary's life an unworthy use of the powers they have been gifted, and they also come to the strange conclusion that the nature of the Immortals' mission actually starves them of the very ambition they need to evolve, without suffering the fate of transformation. Perhaps this is why so many Immortals succumb in the line of service. Certainly, they have the ambition, but it is not being given the agency to empower them beyond the parochial scope of what their duties command. As they reach the shores of Adolin, the adventurer dons a new garb, a garb symbolizing their freedom while also acknowledging their origins. Heeding Ralban's parting words by letting their ambition drive them, while staying true to what they really are.